Hi everyone, welcome back to Kidding Around. My name is Melanie Smith and I am so excited that you are here with me today for another Standout Story video. Today we will be reading the book How to Make an Apple Pie and See the World, and we will also be making our very own Play-Doh apple pie. Before we do that though, if you like what you're seeing here and want to follow along with all of Kidding Around's videos, please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also if you really like what you're doing here, please share us with your friends. Thank you very much. All right, do you know this book, How to Make an Apple Pie and See the World by Marjorie Priceman? It is a goofy, silly, really fun book, and I think we should dive right in. How to Make an Apple Pie and See the World by Marjorie Priceman. How to Make an Apple Pie and See the World. Making an apple pie is really very easy. First, get all the ingredients at the market. Mix them well, bake, and serve. Unless, of course, the market is closed. In that case, go home and pack a suitcase. Take your shopping list and some walking shoes. Then catch a steamship bound for Europe. Use the 6 days on board to brush up on your Italian. If you time it right, you'll arrive in Italy at harvest time. Find a farm deep in the countryside. Gather some superb semolina wheat. An armful or two will do. Then hop a train to France and locate a chicken. French chickens lay elegant eggs, and you want only the finest ingredients for your pie. Coax the chicken to give you an egg. Better yet, bring the chicken with you. There's less chance of breaking the egg that way. Get to Sri Lanka any way you can. You can't miss it. Sri Lanka is a pear-shaped island in the Indian Ocean. The best cinnamon in the world is made there from the bark of the native karundu tree. So go directly to the rainforest. Find a karundu tree and peel off some bark. If a leopard is napping beneath the tree, be very quiet. Hitch a ride to England. Make the acquaintance of a cow. You'll know she's an English cow from her good manners and charming accent. Ask if you can borrow a cup or two of milk. Even better, bring the whole cow with you for the freshest possible results. Stow away on a banana boat headed home to Jamaica. On your way there, you can pick up some salt. Fill a jar with salty seawater. When the boat docks in Jamaica, walk to the nearest sugar plantation. Introduce yourself to everyone. Tell them about the pie you're making. Then go into the fields and cut a few stalks of sugar cane. Better fly home. You don't want the ingredients to spoil. Wait a minute. Aren't you forgetting something? What about the apples? Have the pilot drop you off in Vermont. You won't have to go far to find an apple orchard. Pick 8 rosy apples from the top of the tree. Give 1 to the chicken, 1 to the cow, and eat 1 yourself. That leaves 5 for the pie. Then hurry home. Now, all you have to do is mill the wheat into flour, grind the karundu bark into cinnamon, evaporate the seawater from the salt, boil the sugarcane, persuade the chicken to lay an egg, milk the cow, churn the milk into butter, slice the apples, mix the ingredients, and bake the pie. Whew! While the pie is cooling, invite some friends over to share it with you. Remember that apple pie is delicious, topped with vanilla ice cream, which you can get at the market. But if the market happens to be closed, you can eat it plain. Yes, I agree. I think getting the cream would be quite an ordeal. And then here, as you can see, the back page is a recipe for apple pie. I think it would be very fun to make this pie and then read the book while I eat my pie. Don't you think that sounds like a yummy idea? You know, I forgot to tell you, according to my Holiday a Day calendar, today is National Pie Day. I think there are at least 2 National Pie Days this year, but this is the first one, and I think it is a great excuse to eat pie. And it's also a great excuse to make pie. So we are going to be making a Play-Doh pie. So this is not a pie that you would be eating, but it is very fun to make and then pretend with. And I think maybe you've noticed that there is no Play-Doh here on my table. So you are going to get to make the Play-Doh to make your pie. So making Play-Doh requires using the burners on a stove. So there's heat involved, so this is absolutely something that you need to make sure that you have an adult's permission and an adult supervision as you're making, okay? All right, well, once you have that, the supplies that you will need for this recipe are a big bowl to mix. You'll need a big pot and a heat-proof spoon. As I mentioned, you will need the stove. And you will also need some measuring cups. You'll need 1 cup. You'll need a 1/2 cup. And then you will also need measuring spoons. You will need some flour, some cooking oil, like vegetable oil. You will need some salt, some water. And then, oh, you know what I forgot to tell you is this Play-Doh is actually scented like apple pie. So you will need some apple pie spice and some cinnamon. This will make it smell very good. And I don't think that I told you, you need some cream of tartar for the Play-Doh. That doesn't actually make the smell any better, it just makes the Play-Doh better. You will also need some red food coloring and some green food coloring. And then you will need some way to roll out your Play-Doh. If you don't have a roller, you can use a canned good. So like a can of beans or a can of corn, you can use that as your roller. And then I am also going to be using a knife, a very dull knife. This is not sharp at all, to be able to just make some lines and some cuts when we get to the point of actually shaping the pie. All right, so I am going to start mixing my dry ingredients first. So I will pull over my bowl, and then I am going to measure out a cup of flour to put in my bowl. All right, I'm going to be spooning the flour into the cup over the flour as much as I can. So if I spill, it will go back into the flour and not be a mess that I need to clean up. It's much easier to not make messes in the first place than to have to clean them up, don't you think? All right, I'm getting close. Man, these cups feel a lot bigger when you are filling them spoonful at a time, you know? Okay, so that looks pretty good. So I'm going to now split the flour and kind of push it back. So if there are any holes back behind my spoon, that they're getting filled. And then I am going to scrape the excess off, and then I will dump it in my bowl. Okay, now we're moving on to the salt. We need a 1/2 cup of salt. So I will be pouring the salt into my 1/2 cup over my bowl, because if I spill, it will go into the bowl. All right, I have to say I am very close on this salt. 1/2 cup of salt is a lot of salt. It's not for Play-Doh, but it would be for cooking, because with salt, a little bit goes a really long way. All right, it looks like I have just enough here, so then I am going to dump that in. And then I am going to take my cream of tartar, and I am going to put 2 teaspoons into my bowl. So I'll scoop it here. There's 1 and 2. And of course, as I'm measuring, I'm trying to make sure that they're level. The item is level across the top of the teaspoon so that I'm measuring properly. Then I am going to take my apple pie spice. This is what makes it smell like apple pie. And I am going to measure 1 teaspoon and put that in too. And then I will take the cinnamon and do a teaspoon of that as well. And you can see I'm kind of banging it there back and forth to get the excess off. All right, and then I'll dump that in. Okay, so those are all of our dry ingredients. So then we are going to go ahead and give those a stir, mix them up completely. So you want this all to be one color when you are done. That's how you will know that it is completely mixed. That way you know the cinnamon and the apple pie spice is all mixed in and that there is nothing that will be separated out. All right, looks pretty good. Then I'm going to try to get down into those little creases where the bowl hits the bottom of the table. Okay, so that's good. Now we're going to set that aside and we are going to work on our liquid ingredients. So this will be done on the stove top. So again, you need to make sure that you've got an adult supervision. You should put your stove burner on medium heat, and then you are going to put a cup of water into your pot. But before you put it in, you should put some red food coloring into the water. This just makes it a little bit easier to mix in. So I'm just going to give that a quick little swirl. I guess, you know what, it's not really mixing, so I'm going to go ahead and just use my spoon just a little bit. All right, that is completely mixed. It doesn't take very long for liquid to mix. And then I will put that in there. And then we need, you know, I think I know the measurement of the oil, but I am going to check it with the recipe because I would hate to tell you wrong. Yes, I was right, but double checking is always a good thing, right? All right, so it's 1 tablespoon of oil that you are going to put into your liquid measure, or your liquid on your stove. And then you can give that a little bit of a stir. The oil and the water won't mix very well, but you can give it a little stir. And then you are going to take your dry ingredients and spoon those all in to the pot. You spoon as carefully as you can to avoid the mess, if you can. And of course, if you make a mess, it's really not a big deal. You just quickly clean it up, right? All right, and then you are going to very carefully just keep stirring. Play-Doh takes a little bit of time, and I will tell you that every single time I have made Play-Doh, which has been a lot of times in my life, I get to a point where I'm like, oh, you know what? I don't know if I did it right. And then all of a sudden, it all comes together. So if you get to that point and you think maybe things aren't looking right, don't worry. They probably are. Just keep stirring. Okay, so this is again over medium height, and I am just going to stir and stir and stir and stir. Okay, so you can see here, as I kind of scrape away from the bottom, you can tell that it is starting to become Play-Doh mixture. So we're on the right track, and we are very close. Don't give up, it's coming. All right, so we have gotten to the point now that we just need to let it cool. It's when you start to see this huge ball forming that it is done, and you just need to give it some time to cool. So I am going to go ahead and set this aside. And then once it is cool, it's not quite cool yet, so I wouldn't recommend holding it. But you can definitely put it out on like a floured surface. I think I'll flour the surface just a little bit. And that just, the flour just keeps it from sticking. If it's still a little bit sticky, you can always add just a little bit of flour to it, even after it's cool. All right, so here's what's going on. At about this point in the video, my overhead camera stopped recording. So I made the entire pie, but I have no overhead shots to show you. And as you can imagine, that's probably pretty important, right? So we are going to pick up with new Play-Doh. I have made this, it is cooled, and we are going to pretend that I have stirred it over here in the big pot, and I've dumped it out to cool. It has cooled, and now we are moving on. So I have my red Play-Doh, but as you know, in the pie we also had brown Play-Doh that we used for the crust, right? So how do you think we can make red Play-Doh into brown? Well, I'm going to tell you, you need to add food coloring. You need to add a different color. And in order to make red into brown, you can add green. So we are going to do that. So I have about half of the red Play-Doh, and I have taken the other half, and I am going to make a little bowl, kind of like that, out of the Play-Doh that I want to turn brown, and I'm going to put 2 drops of green food coloring in. Now I am going to mix this in, and the best way to mix this in so you don't get your hands all green and so you don't get your surface all green is once you have the food coloring in the Play-Doh, you are going to fold over all of the red Play-Doh onto the green, and you are going to just keep folding over until it is relatively mixed in. If you see a big patch of green like that, you see I touched that and I got a little green on my skin. I mean, that's okay. It'll wash off in a couple days probably. But if you see something like that and you can just wrap over the Play-Doh, it won't turn your skin green. So you are going to just mix this with your hands. This is a really good hand workout, and you're just going to mix it until it turns the color that you want, or until it looks, I guess I should say, until it appears to all be relatively one color. It may not yet be the color that you want. It may not yet be brown enough. So if it's not, then we will, look at that once it's all mixed, and we'll decide if we need to add more green or not. But you are just going to keep mixing like this until you see that everything has been mixed in. You're getting a great hand workout. This is wonderful. So I also, as I'm doing this, I'm going to explain a little bit about how I knew that adding green to red would make brown. So if you have seen a color wheel before, the colors across from each other on a color wheel, if you mix them, make brown. So you can see on this color wheel there are 3 ways on this color wheel to make brown, and red and green is one of them. So I am continuing to mix. This is a great exercise in patience, right? It takes a little bit, but it's definitely worth it, and it's really cool to be able to watch it kind of change in front of your eyes. Okay, so I think it is all basically one color. I'm going to compare it to my red, and yes, there is definitely a difference, but I think I want it to be just a little bit more brown. So I am going to do the same thing that I just did, and I am going to add 2 more drops. Oops, I got a little bit overzealous, so I only squeezed it once, but I think I got plenty of food coloring there. I'm going to squeeze in some more green, and then I am folding over to try to keep the green off of my hands. I would also highly recommend that if you do this, or as you do this, the surface that you use is maybe covered with some wax paper or some foil. Because I know I have gotten food coloring on my counter before in my kitchen, and sometimes it's really hard to get off. It wants to stain. So protect your work surface as you do this. All right, I'm just going to keep mixing now. Okay, I am reaching the point, it looks like, that everything is all mixed together, and I have to say, I'm definitely seeing a nice shade of brown. All right, I'm just going to squeeze it over just a little bit more, and then we are going to move on to actually making our pie. Okay, so now I have my red and I have my brown, so I am going to make this into the pie crust. So what I'm going to do with the brown, I am going to separate it into thirds. So I'm going to try to separate it into 3 kind of equal parts. And then I am going to take one of those parts and put that aside. And then I'm actually going to add just a little bit more to that. And then I am going to take the part that I have left, and I'm still mixing in just a little bit. Did you see that? So, all right, and then I'm going to make it into a ball. Doesn't have to be perfect at all. Just, something that looks kind of like a ball. And then I am going to take my measuring cup. If your measuring cup isn't this shape or size, you can use a small glass bowl too. Oh, and you can see I still had flour in my measuring cup from making the Play-Doh. That's all right. I'll just mix it in. Okay, so now I have my ball. I'm using my mixing cup or my bowl, and I am going to just push down on that ball, and then the stuff that comes out the side, I am going to just kind of push up along the side of my measuring cup. Just like that. And then I'm going to gently wiggle my measuring cup out of that. And you can see I'm left with a pretty good pie crust. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of pinch it just a little bit, make it a little bit more, not quite so flat on the bottom. But really, this is a pretty good start, don't you think? Okay, and then I am going to take my red Play-Doh, and I am going to take little pieces of it and roll them into balls. And these are my apples. So I just kind of pinch off a piece that you can see, not very scientific, the amount that I take. I'm just making little apples, and some of them are bigger and some of them are smaller, just like in nature, right? Okay, so I'll keep doing this until the bottom of the pie crust is relatively covered. So let's see, I probably have, how many more do you think? Maybe 4 or 5 more to make? These go together very quickly. This is a really great Play-Doh. It's so soft and so moldable. I always like homemade Play-Doh, the texture of it better than the store-bought. So I have to say I kind of liked the smell of the store-bought. But this stuff smells really good. It smells just like apple pie. So you can't argue with that either, right? Okay, so you can see I'm going to make one more apple, and I'll slide it in there. And now you can see we are ready for our crust. So we are going to make a lattice crust or a basket weave crust with the rest of this Play-Doh that with that third of the brown Play-Doh that I set aside earlier. So what I'm going to do is make it relatively kind of round there. It doesn't matter too much. And then I am going to roll it out. And again, if you don't have a rolling pin, you can use a can of beans or a can of corn. That works really well too. So I am going to try to get it all about the same thickness. And I am also going to try to make this more of a rectangle than any other shape. It doesn't have to be an exact rectangle, of course, but I am going to try to make it more rectangular than any other shape. All right, there we go. Oops, kind of curled up on me there. All right, well that looks to be pretty good. All right, so I am going to be making 6 stripes of dough. Of course, you can make any number of stripes that you want, but I am going to be making 6 out of this, so I'm going to try to kind of cut it to make it relatively straight, because it would be great if they were all about the same size. It certainly does not have to be perfect. All right, so that's my rectangle. Now I'm going to try to cut this into 6 pieces. So I am going to cut it in half, and then I need to make each one of these halves 3 pieces, which is actually only 2 cuts. That's an important thing to remember as you're making cuts like this. And you'll see I'm using my knife, which is a butter knife. It is not sharp at all. This is a great cutter. Of course, if you have a Play-Doh cutter, you could use that too. That would probably work even better. Okay, so now I have my strips cut, and I am going to go ahead and put 3 strips across, all going the same direction. And you know what? If you get to this point and you realize that your strips are not long enough, you can stretch them a little bit. That's the really cool thing about this dough. All right, so I have my 3 strips, and now I am going to go ahead and weave in my other strip so it looks like a basket weave. So what I am going to do, I'm going to go over this top one, so that means I need to go under that second one, and then I'll go over the bottom one. So you see that? Now I am going to alternate, so I'm going to go under this top one. Let's see if I can get that up. All right, so I'll lay that out, and then I'll put this back over. And I want it to go over the middle one, and then I want to go under this bottom one, just like that. And then I will make this one look just like that one. So it's going to go over the top, under the middle, like that, and over the bottom. Okay, and then once you're at this point, all you do is you can use your knife if you want to, or you can just kind of pull off this, the excess of your basket weave. You just pull it off right there. I'm going around and I'm pulling off all the excess on all of my strips. And it is amazing how it just kind of tears. If you just hold it just like that, it just kind of tears away, which is very nice. It's great to work with. All right. Wow, it feels like I have more than 9 strips. Okay, so there I have that. And then my last step is to just kind of go around and pinch these basket strips just to the edge of the pie plate, just to make it all one piece. And you can see here, I got a little thin on those strips right here on this side, so I am actually going to just add a little bit more Play-Doh right there, and that way it looks like one whole piece of pie, or one whole pie. All right, and there we go. I have my yummy, well, not yummy, right? We don't actually eat this Play-Doh. It smells so good, but if you want to actually eat apple pie, you should make the recipe from the back page of this book, right? But we can pretend that this is yummy. It smells so good, and I could go and serve this to someone in my house as a pretend pie. I would love to see pictures of your pie. You can ask an adult to take a picture and put that on our Facebook page. Well, I look forward to seeing you on Monday. We'll be talking about another great artist and doing another really fun art project. And until then, thanks so much for traveling the world with me and making an apple pie. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for kidding around with me. I will see you next time.